Well, I'm not an expert on human society, and I would defer to anthropologists and social scientists on this. But it is certainly clear from sort of classic work in psychology that that we have a great capacity of influencing each other, and not perhaps being fully aware of the fact that we are influenced. I'll give you a sort of toy example. There was a classic study by a guy called Stanley Milgram here in New York City in the 60s. And he was interested in how people sort of copy each other within crowds. And for example, they'll copy the gaze of other individuals. So he had some students looking up at a window, and there was just a silhouette of a couple in the window, nothing much to look at. And what he was interested in was, as you walk past, will you look up also? And of course, if the more people are looking up, the more people will stop and look up. And so here we have what we call positive feedback. The fact that you will tend to copy the behavior of other individuals because, you want to check something out. You use that social information within a variety of contexts. But there are other examples, such as, the Mona Lisa, which is an incredibly famous painting. Why is it so famous? Well, it's probably not because it's the best painting in the world. It's probably because of a series of historical events and that led to its fame. And then the more famous it is, the more famous it becomes, and so on. And people like Duncan Watts and Matt Sulganik at Princeton have described this as the Justin Timberlake effect. No offense, Justin, but there can be even a sort of an average song can actually be believed to be better than it is, and that can lead to sort of this positive feedback and people then buying lots of albums. And so there is this very interesting feedback effect that tends to occur. And what they've discovered, which is quite fascinating, is that when you're choosing music, the very worst songs and the very best songs, it doesn't really matter about this feedback. The very best songs, you would have chosen them anyway. The very worst songs, well, even with feedback, you're going to, it's wrong. But for this large spectrum in the middle, people are very strongly influenced by what they believe others think about that music, and will actually change their own preferences based upon what they think others think, even if that information is incorrect. Well, just like in animal groups, blind conformity is almost never a good thing. Animals have actually tuned their behavior to have adaptive conformity in a way that they will tend to conform when it pays for them to conform. And in actual fact, having a diversity of responses turns out to be very important. So I was just reading a paper recently about innovation, about how animals can solve problems. And even in small birds like house sparrows, having a larger group allows them to have a sort of a better suite of different types of personalities and behaviors within the group, which enables the group as a whole to sort of solve problems more readily. And of course, in human society, this is incredibly important. And the types of specialization and generalization of skills are really interesting within societies. And of course, we can start building structure, hierarchical or multi-level structure within our societies as well. So in addition to having this kind of self-organized behavior, this kind of distributed intelligence, we can also, harness other aspects. And so we're not as prone to these kind of errors as we could be. But of course, there are multiple examples in history of societies really going quite heavily down a distorted path. And so perhaps, the animals who have evolved to behave within these large societies are less susceptible to such behaviors. Yeah, I think that in general, the understanding of sort of complex adaptive systems is becoming increasingly influential in terms of understanding markets and in understanding banking and in understanding how people within these organizations behave, because again, there is a type of social feedback. And to sort of emphasize that we haven't evolved to deal with information coming at these very high rates. And typically, when you're having to make very fast decisions, those decisions tend to be less accurate on average. And this can lead to sort of a mass sort of deciding factor in the wrong direction sometimes. And so it's perhaps no surprise that in this sort of modern society, when everything's fast, that sometimes you get these cascades of error and very large mistakes being made. And so I think in general, understanding how communication works and how feedbacks work and how sort of network structure and topologies work, and understanding how our own society as a complex system can indeed shed great light on how these things function.